In 2003, Kenneth Ross, also known as KC, a member of the SchoolYard Crips, rode with fellow gang members in a hostile territory on a mission to find enemy gang members to bang on or to confront. And while driving, one of the SchoolYard Crip members spots an enemy. So the group makes a U-turn, rolls down the two passenger side windows, and fires multiple shots at the group, killing one of the members running from the gunfire. The SchoolYard Crip members, they're eventually caught and arrested. But this is just the beginning of that situation. Because during the trial, KC, he testified against fellow gang members charged with a 2003 drive-by shooting and had officially been able to snitch by the SchoolYard Crip members. And after his cooperation with investigators, KC was released from custody in 2004. But unfortunately, he didn't realize the danger he put himself in, and by the time he found out, it was too late. Just before 11 p.m. on March 6, 2004, Brenda Freeman was walking towards a neighborhood liquor store when she saw several men, including SchoolYard Crip members KC and Griffin at a bus stop. And on her way home, Freeman heard several gunshots, turned around, and saw Griffin, who she knew by sight, holding a gun at arm's length, and right after that, Griffin running off. Freeman then saw KC land on the ground. He had been shot 3 times, once in the shoulder and twice in the head. Also, one of the other men who had been at the bus stop, James Brown, had been shot in the hand. Brown, he told the investigating officers that just before the shooting started, he heard KC ask, "What's up?" At first, a fearful Freeman told the police she had not seen the shooter, but later identified Griffin in the photo lineup. And a couple weeks later, on March 19th, the police searched Griffin's bedroom where they recovered more evidence, including photos of Griffin posing with guns, hanging with other SchoolYard Crip members, and several gang-affiliated tattoos. And due to that evidence and several witness statements, Griffin was convicted of the murder of Kenneth Ross, or KC, and he was sentenced to state prison for a term of 67 years to life. Definitely rest in peace to Kenneth Ross. Whether he was given statements or not, death is nothing to play with. There's no coming back from it. But that just shows the brutality of the SchoolYard Crip members. Even if it's members from their own gang, nobody's above the program. And if it's an issue, they're known to deal with it themselves, even if it's internal. The crazy part is, this situation, it doesn't even scratch the surface when it comes to the history and everything this gang is known for. They definitely have a story to tell. With that being said, if you don't know by now, we're addressing the SchoolYard Crips. And let me just warn y'all now, this one gets intense if you didn't already know. Yeah. All right. Wait, hold on.
Yeah, all right.
Welcome to CALI'S Most Dangerous. Let's get into it.
Owners, my G.
Oh, yeah,
Just
yeah,
make sure
man.
that they move safely around here, right?
This motherfucker's from here getting, you feel me? Imagine you ain't even from here.
You know what I'm saying? You know, ain't from here. Yeah. That's some more shit.
Yeah.
History of the SchoolYard Crips. The midtown section of Los Angeles is today and has always been a place of lively people, events, and places. It houses one of the biggest malls in Los Angeles at the Westfield Center. It's around 25 miles away from UCLA. And when it was open, the Rivalry skating rink was always a huge attraction for the city. But in the background of all that came a lot of deadly gangs, like the Rolling 60 Crips, and one of the most well-known gangs from that area, the SchoolYard Crips. In the 1970s, gangs, they were sweeping through Los Angeles, with damn near a new gang forming every week according to their different locations. The West Side and the East Side Crips, they had a foundation throughout Los Angeles and had different Crips branching off and becoming their own subsets of gangs, like the Rolling 60 Crips, the A-Trade Gangster Crips, the East Coast Crips, and a few others.
Before. What was there before, you had a lot of Bible. Back then you had gangs like Rock and Roll Gangsters. You had the Bible Crips. You had the Harlem Godfathers over there. You had, like I said, you had the Midtown families over there.
During these years, Los Angeles was already filled with young kids representing their own areas and looking out for each other, including a group in the Mid-City section of Los Angeles, which composed of members Kevin Darling, which was the main founder.
Kevin Darling and they was tired of it because the homies was playing football with other gangs, with gang members, and everybody had a gang and shit. And the Kevin Darling, the homies was at Alta Loma. We got an elementary school in our hood. in Rampart, and you keep going, there's gonna be a school to your left. That's elementary. That is the original SchoolYard Crips school.
Kevin Rome, Big Ray, also known as Big Casper, Charles, Droopy, Chico, KC, Ken Capone, Gerald Brown, OG Nelson, and Davey Carter.
The Master Blaster was actually one of the first schoolyards too with Kevin Darling.
Wait a minute, you talking about the Master Blaster from Jungles?
Davey Carter. He started the set, him and Kevin Darling. But anyway, the story on Davey Carter, Master Blaster, he ended up turning Black P Stone. And I found out he became a reputable, and he took all his aggression out on the schoolyards. He came over there and shot up a lot of my homies. He shot my homeboy Big Swan up, buckshots. He did a lot of work. These are the original SchoolYard Crips.
This group, they grew up on the same block and was often seen together at local events, playing sports together, and at parties. But like I already mentioned, gangs in the 1970s were already in full form, and they often have run-ins with different gangs, with some even turning violent.
Life's, the old saying, life's cheap, and life is cheap. I'll tell you, it's very cheap. It's damn near free, in some parts of the city.
All these confrontations led to Kevin Darling forming the SchoolYard Crips in 1978, after feeling it was essential for the group to have their own identity and brotherhood. And from the jump, the SchoolYard Crips, they were going at it with a lot of surrounding gangs, with the founder OG Nelson's death causing a bloody rivalry with the top gang in Los Angeles in 1982.
Had OG Nelson, rest in peace. Nelson got killed, if I'm not mistaken. I was at St. John's Boys Home in 1982. I think Nelson got killed in 82 when we were squabbling with the 6 souls at the skating rink.
Which we're definitely going to cover in a little bit, but to keep with the history, another prominent member included Davey Carter, also known as Master Blaster, who went on to become a prominent member from the Jungles and doubled back to commit a lot of shootouts against his former gang. Yeah, but numbers-wise, the SchoolYard Crips, they definitely didn't start off as one of the deepest gangs, but they made up for it by having more than a few ruthless members whose stories are still told to this day. But to address these stories, we gotta get into who this gang is. Who are the SchoolYard Crips?
Most of them that are doing these things are kids that do not feel that they are worth anything.
If you didn't play basketball or football, there's nothing to do but go home and shoot dice and get high or get drunk.
The SchoolYard Crips, they have a long-standing foundation in the streets of Los Angeles when it comes to their respect and the fear they place from their enemies. But let's get into some of the basics so we can fully understand this gang. The SchoolYard Crips are predominantly an African-American street gang, but they definitely have other races. It's some Mexicans and a couple whites from this gang as well. In fact, they have a prominent member in the 1990s who was known to be completely with the activities, with a crazy situation playing out in 1999. At about 1 a.m. on July 26, 1999, 5 friends met at a restaurant parking lot on the corner of Adams and Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles, California. Keith the Carton Doll, Felix Rodriguez, and Michelle Walton were in one car, and Trevor Fuller and Sean Hislop arrived in separate cars. In that area, Crenshaw Boulevard is separates Territory on the east, claimed by the Black P Stone Bloods, and Territory to the west, claimed by the rival SchoolYard Crips. And to give context, during the summer of 1999, those two gangs, they were in the midst of a bloody war involving numerous tit-for-tat shootings, going back and forth with each other. The restaurant that the group was at was in the territory of the Black P Stone and was a known Bloods hangout. Rodriguez, who had been confined to a wheelchair after been paralyzed in an earlier gang shooting, was a Bloods associate. Hislop was also a Bloods member, with the St. Louis Cardinals cap identifying him with the Black P Stone. Anyways, the 5 friends, they decided to drive a few blocks east to Fuller's apartment to continue talking. But as Carndall drove out of the parking lot, she and Rodriguez saw a station wagon similar to known SchoolYard Crip member Jose Costello drive by slowly with the occupants in the car staring straight at him. The 5 friends, they each took note of it, then parked their cars in the parking lot of Fuller's apartment. But as they spoke, the same station wagon they had seen while leaving the restaurant drove up, and the man who had been driving the station wagon at the restaurant had switched to the front passenger seat. He had leaned out of the car and began firing a handgun at the group. And while that car was firing, another car drove up and its occupants also opened fire at the group. The first shooter, who was the original driver, then got out of the station wagon, walked closer, and continued firing. Meanwhile, Rodriguez, who was sitting in Cardale's car, obtained a handgun and began to return fire. And while that was going on, the first shooter jumped back into one of the cars and they drove away. In the aftermath, it was gruesome. One shot killed Fuller instantly and left him bleeding out of the car, and the second grazed Walton's arm. But despite the many shots let off, many of which struck Cardale's car, the other victims, they were unhurt. Police arrived at the scene shortly after the shooting. And although the victims described the drivers, the shooters, and the station wagon, police made no arrests until about 4 years later. In August of 2003, partially based on what later proved to be an erroneous lab reporting linking the recovered handgun to shell casings found at the crime scene, police detectives investigating several unsolved gang-related shootings, including this one, assembled 3 6-man displays, none of which, though, included Castillo's photo. The detectives then showed the 3 displays to Kurtendahl, who picked 2 African-American men, one of each, from 2 of the 3 displays, as being similar to the shooter and the driver, with 85% certainty. The detectives showed Rodriguez 3 displays. He declined the identity of any of the photos, but he said he heard some strangers at a car wash say Castillo was the shooter. The detectives then assembled a 4th display containing photos of 6 Hispanic men, which included Castillo's photo, and showed it to the 4 surviving victims. And with varying degrees of certainty, all 4 of the victims identified Castillo's photo as the driver and the shooter. But before the preliminary hearing, Walton told Kurtendahl she knew the shooter, but was afraid to testify against him. And at trial, Walton said she was scared to testify against Castillo and did not see the driver or the shooter well enough to identify him. Hiphop also didn't identify Castillo at trial and said he feared retaliation for testifying. With that being said though, although 2 of the other victims said they were afraid of testifying for gang retaliation, Rodriguez, he identified Castillo at the preliminary hearing and at trial, and Kurtendahl also identified Castillo at trial. And in the end, the court imposed 190 years to life in prison. Definitely rest in peace to Trevor Fuller. He had an unfortunate run-in with SchoolYard Crip member Jose Castillo, and sadly, it ended with him losing his life. Castillo definitely wasn't the only Mexican member who was known to be with the action though. They have a couple others as well. And just like a lot of the other gangs who have other races in their gangs as well, the SchoolYard Crips other races are mainly based off of their location and the demographic shift of the area over the years. They're located on the west side in the mid-city region of South Los Angeles, California. And as we already know at this point, they originated in the late 1970s, around Longwood Avenue, between Crenshaw Boulevard and Venice Boulevard, which is primarily an African-American area when the gang first started. But over the years, more Latinos relocated to the area, and thus can be seen through the different ethnicities in the long-standing gangs. When it comes to numbers today, the SchoolYard Crips have over 400 active members, but a lot of them been in the streets and been incarcerated as well. And these members, they're spread throughout several cliques within the SchoolYard Crips. This gang, they consist of several smaller Crips, such as Yank Mob, the Midtown, as well as 1600 Block on Longwood Avenue, along with 2800 Block and 4800 Block, which represents 17th Street. In each of these cliques, they have known members who are allegedly responsible for a lot of cold cases and known murders around Los Angeles, especially when it comes to their territory. For example, in March of 2003, the 4500s, who were a crew, our club, which included Fred Bigby, Acid Price, Stanley Barlow, and Giovanni Jones, moved into the SchoolYard Crips territory and were trying to establish themselves in that area. But the SchoolYard Crips, they wanted the 45s out of the area immediately, and they made that known in mid-March of 2003. When graffiti, it was sprayed on Bigby's car. The graffiti included letters SYC and 45K. The 45K stood for 45 Killer. SYC stood for SchoolYard Crips. Bigby and Barlow then confronted a group of SchoolYard Crips. And during the confrontation, James Collier, who was a known SchoolYard Crip member, admitted that his gang had spray painted Bigby's car. And members of the SchoolYard Crips stated that members of the 45 were to get out of the hood. Collier stated, there ain't no more 45, meaning that the 45s were not to remain in that area any longer. According to Barlow, Price was sent with Ruby Martinez in the months prior to March of 2003. Price testified that he and Ruby Martinez went out a few times, but they didn't have a sexual relationship. Collier, however, previously dated and had a sexual relationship with Martinez. Martinez, she testified that she lost her virginity to Collier in February of 2003. And he told Martinez that he was jealous that she spent time with Price. So much so that on a Saturday night of March 22nd, in 2003, Collier chased Price in his car. And later that night, Price went to Andrea's house at 1800 Boulevard. And around 2 a.m. the following morning, Price saw Collier sit in his car in the middle of West Boulevard near 18th Street with his lights off, and he remained there for about 5 minutes before leaving. And on March 23rd, 2003, church services at the First Church of Los Angeles, located on 1800 of West Boulevard, across the street from Andrea's house, ended sometime before 2 p.m. Some of the people who attended the services crossed the street to Andrea's front porch. Among those on the porch were Price, Jones, Christine Kilovich, Charisma Johnson, Shada Johnson, Sharina Johnson, Sheena Johnson, and 12-year-old Joseph Swift. As the people stood on the porch, Collier drove up in a white Oldsmobile and stopped in the same place on West Boulevard he had stopped earlier that morning. Dwayne Pearson, also known as Stag, a fellow SchoolYard Crip member, was a passenger in the car. Collier stopped for about 30 seconds and looked at the porch before slowly driving away towards the house. Price then stood up, raised his arm in front of his chest, and asked, "What's up?" Collier responded, "Something's up," and shook his head. And when Collier got directly in front of the house, he pointed a gun outside of the window and fired 15 to 20 shots into the porch. As Collier fired the gun, the people on the porch got down to avoid being hit. And at some point, Swift got up and attempted to run around to the back of the house. But sadly, he was struck by a bullet and killed instantly. And as Collier drove away from the house, he fired 4 or 5 more shots at Bigby, who was standing in the street near the church, before Bigby returned fire with his high-point 9mm gun. All this played out while the First Church of Los Angeles pastor, Catherine Hughes, was outside next to her car with the gunfire erupting. And when the shooting finally stopped, Pastor Hughes moved the car to the back of the church, where she discovered that a rear of her window had been shot. So she alerted the police, and they took the case for evidence. In addition, the police also recovered 5 shell casings found on the street that had been fired from Bigby's gun. 5 other shell cases were found at the scene that had been fired from a different weapon. An examiner at the Los Angeles Police Department Scientific Investigation Division testified that the last shells mentioned were fired from a Glock or Smith & Wesson pistol, and the bullets found in the street were fired from a conventional rifle firearm. Also, detectives found that on March 26, 2003, Collier had taken his car to a paint and body shop and painted his car blue. That's because at this point, Collier knew the police were looking for him, with his photograph being shown on the news. Shortly after painting his car, Collier left for Henderson, Nevada, but he was eventually arrested and charged for the murder. During the trial, Collier testified in his own behalf. He admitted that he was a member of the SchoolYard Crips, but claimed that he ended his active participation before he was released from prison. Collier also admitted to following Price's car the day before the shooting, but claimed he had just wanted to speak to Bigby because Bigby was making a problem out of nothing. In addition, Collier denied that he sat parked in his car outside of Andrea's house the night before the shooting. He also said that he approached the porch, to which Price pointed a gun at him and he ducked. As he ducked, Collier heard a gunshot. He says he then drew his gun, a 9mm semi-automatic Smith & Wesson, and returned fire over his shoulder, aiming towards Price. Saying as Collier was leaving, Peterson directed his attention to the other side of the car as Bigby was pointing a gun at Collier. So Collier, he said he fired his gun at Bigby as well in self-defense. He says he subsequently threw his gun off the Santa Monica Pier. But the prosecution told a different story, saying shortly after fleeing to Nevada, he called the police and told them that he would turn himself in, but failed to do so. But during that conversation, Collier didn't mention that anybody pulled a gun on him. Also on April 13th, when Collier was arrested, he was interviewed by detectives. And during that tape-recorded interview, Collier stated that he was not present at the shooting. He later testified that he didn't tell the detectives that Price had put a gun on him because he didn't want to be labeled a snitch. And after testifying for himself, and ultimately due to witness statements, his police interview, and several other factors, the court sentenced CALI'S to life without the possibility of parole. Man, bro, that's just one example of how intense this gang has been since its foundation. When it comes to attire, they're known to sport apparel for the New York Yankees and New York City baseball teams with the large NYC letters, which corresponds with the word in their name, which is Yard. And it's not to be confused with neighborhood Crip members, particularly the neighborhood Rolling 60 Crips, who the SchoolYard Crips have a deadly history of going at it with this beef stemming back from an incident at the Warden Wells skating rink. Warden Wells, it has a history of being the most popular skating rinks amongst gang-related youth in Los Angeles. Warden Wells was located on Venice Boulevard between Pico Avenue and Vicente Boulevard in Mid-City, and this region of Los Angeles is claimed by the SchoolYard Crips. However, this skating ring attracted gangs from all over Los Angeles, such as the Gear Gang Crips, the Venice Shoreline Crips, the East Coast Crips, the Great Street Crips, and of course, the SchoolYard Crips. Warden Wells also attracted different powerhouse gangs from different areas, such as the A-Tray Gangsters, the Denver Lane Bloods, as well as Compton gangs. It also attracted the Rolling 60 Crips, who would often claim the roller rink as their own, which means there were constant altercations between the two gangs. And occasionally gunfire would erupt in the parking lot. But in 1982, the death of a founder of the SchoolYard Crips, O.G. Nelson, started an all-out war between them, one of the most deadly in Los Angeles. That year, the SchoolYard Crips got into it with the neighborhood 60 Crips at the Warden Wells skating rink, and while Nelson was running across the street, the security guard opened fire on the SchoolYard Crips, killing Nelson instantly. While the 60s didn't kill Nelson, this situation started a bloody feud between the two gangs, with some alleged hatred to each other being sent to this day, with fights, shootouts, and murders often being a result of crossing each other in those days. But the SchoolYard Crips, they definitely weren't just going to war with the 60s. This gang was active and well known to be dangerous throughout the 1990s and the early 2000s. And all these activities continued well into the point of the 2000s, to the point to where the feds came knocking. And an investigation led to a gang injunction being placed on the gang in June of 2006, when investigators stated that residents were prisoners and victims of the SchoolYard Crips, war against rival gangs, and a foreseeable retaliation by rival gangs. Also stating that this gang demonstrated a blatant disregard for the lives and safety of innocent victims, including children, who would often get caught in crossfire. Saying residents live in a constant fear of shootings and random violence breaking out at any moment on the streets, sidewalks, and local parks. Gang members leave residents so afraid of retaliation, they often don't report crimes ranging from reckless driving and driving under the influence to robberies, beatings, shootings, and murders, according to court papers. Also saying that they encourage children to join their gang. With them quoting, the defendants, they take advantage of the immature and susceptible minds of minor-aged children in order to increase their numbers and power into the community.
They drop out of school. We don't do anything to bring them back into school. They go on the streets. They see others making a great deal of money, either in drugs or prostitution or a whole variety of criminal activities, and they say, that's the way to go for me.
This injunction, it led to the arrest of several prominent members of the SchoolYard Crips. But this gang, they definitely stayed active in them years, and they continued with basically the same activities, especially going to war with the enemy, allies and rivals of the SchoolYard Crips. The SchoolYard Crips are located in a section of Los Angeles where the gangs who occupy it, they're often going at it. So naturally, they're gonna have a lot of enemies. One of the main gangs the SchoolYard Crips have a history of feuding with are the Mainfield Gangster Crips, with the first member of the Mainfield Gangster Crips died from a gang-related death, being killed by a SchoolYard Crip member in the 1980s. This beef, it goes all the way back to when the Mainfield Gangsters were known as the Mainfield Hustlers, which means the rivalry between the SchoolYard Crips and the Mainfield Gangster Crips is over 30 years old. These days, it's not too much static. There's history going back to the 1980s and 90s about these guys going at it. For example, on January 14th, 1991, at around 5:30 p.m., John Temple bought a Monte Carlo in exchange for rock cocaine about a half a mile from Olympic Boulevard and La Brea Avenue. John was alone at the time he bought the car, told the owner he needed to pick up his girlfriend. 2 hours later, 9 gang members Anthony Thompson and Kerry O'Neal were driving around West Boulevard in Stevenson's Mustang. As they approached Olympic and Sycamore, O'Neal, he noticed Sean traveling faster than they were. The Monte Carlo initially maneuvered to turn left, but instead drove behind the Mustang and had a red light on La Brea Avenue. The Monte Carlo had put into the left turn lane next to the Mustang. The Monte Carlo's closeness caught O'Neal's attention, so O'Neal exchanged a glance to Stevenson, acknowledging the Monte Carlo. O'Neal, he again looked at the Monte Carlo and saw the front seat passenger, Jerome Naranaga, hanging out of the window, holding a gun with both hands and pointing it at the Mustang. So Stevenson and O'Neal, they ducked. And as they did that, O'Neal heard 2 quick shots, and after a pause, he heard a third shot, followed by the sound of the Monte Carlo speeding up. O'Neal tried to check if Stevenson, who was laying with his face down on O'Neal's lap, was still alive. But the Mustang drifted into the intersection, so O'Neal, who was in the passenger seat, stopped the car. And when he finally stopped, he noticed Stevenson was unconscious, had a faint heartbeat, and had been shot in the face. So O'Neal asked 2 people to call the police, but sadly it was too late for Stevenson. He died from a gunshot wound to the head. Meanwhile, Los Angeles Police Department officer was on duty near Olympic and La Brea Avenue between 7:30 and 7:40 p.m. The officer heard 2 gunshots in rapid succession, followed by a third. He then saw the Monte Carlo sprint from around the corner from westbound Olympic to southbound La Brea. So the officer pursued the Monte Carlo, which approached speeds of around 50 to 60 miles per hour in a residential neighborhood. As a police helicopter also joined the pursuit, the Monte Carlo continued to flee until it reached Pico Boulevard. And after traveling about 5 to 6 blocks on Pico, the Monte Carlo stopped. That's when both Sean, who had been driving the Monte Carlo, and Jerome, who was in the passenger seat, surrendered to the police. A detective claimed Jerome and Sean were members of the SchoolYard Crips. Also sent as SchoolYard Crips were enemies of the Mainfield Gangster Crips, and that a SchoolYard Crip had been murdered shortly before the shooting, and what they believed was a gang-related shooting. Also opining that the Mainfield Hustler Crips were known to drive Mustangs with similar appearances to Stevenson, and the shooting occurred in the Mainfield Hustlers territory. A detective spoke with Jerome and Sean on the night of their arrest. When detained, Jerome asked the detective what the charges were pending against him were, and the detective responded that the 2 could talk about it later. He then said, "Is the dude dead yet?" To which the detective responded, "Not yet." The detective testified as a gang expert, opining that the gang members would still trade narcotics in order to obtain cars and drive-by shootings. He added that gang members, they also participated in drive-by shootings with other gang members for the recognition of the gang. When 2 members participated, one could serve as a witness for the other. In addition, one could act as a driver and the other as a shooter, making it easier to commit a drive-by shooting. Also saying that gang members were very aware of rival gang territory, and therefore would know exactly what would happen when gang members drove into a rival gang member's territory. In the end, the jury convicted Sean and Jerome of the first-degree murder of Stevenson and the attempted murder of O'Neal. And the trial court sentenced the SchoolYard Crip members to life in prison. That's just one gang that the SchoolYard Crips are known to go to war with. This gang also has a history of going to war with the neighborhood car, such as feuds with the Rolling 60. And they also go at it with a few other Gangster Crips as well, such as the Mainfield Gangster Crips and the Playboy Gangster Crips.
Vincent Cole, he just did 41 years from the set. He just now getting out since 1980 when we first got beef with the PBGs. He just now getting out from that 187 when they killed my homeboy Bam Bam at a house party. And the homeboys retaliated at LA High. Well, my homeboy just now getting out 41 years, and that was in 1980.
And when it comes with feuds with Bloods, the SchoolYard Crips' main rivals, they're definitely going to include the Black P Stones and the Rolling 20 Neighborhood Bloods, along with the Fruitown Brims. Danger rating of the SchoolYard Crips. Established over 5 decades ago, the SchoolYard Crips are a long-standing gang that has more than a few reputable members that have made the gang well respected throughout the streets of Los Angeles and well beyond. Throughout the years though, this gang have also gained more than a few enemies and have engaged in daily back and forth with their rival. And these guys have done more than stood on their own accord when it came to war. You guys have already heard a few stories, but like I said, they only scratched the surface of the level of brutality of this gang. That's why these guys are going to receive a danger rating of an 8.4 out of 10. That's just my score though. What do you guys think? Did I go too high or did I go too low? Y'all let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. Prominent figures. Founded in the 1970s, the SchoolYard Crips have more than a few prominent members who have helped earn the gang's respect over the years. But first off, of course, rest in peace to his fallen members, OG Nelson, Y'all let me know in the comments of any of the members who are no longer with us, if their names are on. In addition, there's a couple other members who helped establish the SchoolYard Crips, with founders including Kevin Darling, who was the main founder, Kevin Rome, Big Ray, also known as Big Casper, Charles, Droopy, Chico, KC, Ken Capone, Joe Brown, and OG Nelson.
Had OG Nelson, rest in peace. Nelson got killed, if I'm not mistaken. I was at St. John's Boys Home in 1982. I think Nelson got killed in 82 when we were squabbling with the 6-0s at the skating ring.
In addition, it's also OGs, Big Crazy Drake, Big Peanut, Big Crazy C, Lil Crazy C, Big Bodine, Crip Cow, Crazy P, Big Mad Ali, Big D-Lo, Mama Gwen, Bodine, who was a top fighter from the gang, and their first shooter, Vincent Cole, who was killed by a Playboy Gangster Crip in 1980 at LA High School after the Playboy Gangsters killed one of their homies at a house party. This incident, it started a bloody war that can still be seen between these two gangs to this day. Aside from the gang members being known for their brutality though, the SchoolYard Crips, they also have some prominent members who are known for their activism across Los Angeles. For example, Darren Taylor, also known as Bo, helped mediate the 1992 Watch Truce between the Bloods and the Crips, and is the founder of Unity One, which is a gang prevention program to help kids avoid gangs and counsel inmates at the downtown Los Angeles County Jail. Yeah, this guy, he's a former SchoolYard Crip member. But unfortunately in 2008, Darren Taylor, he died of cancer at the age of 42, so definitely rest in peace. When it comes to music and entertainment, they have a few members as well. For example, TC4800, coming to the gang signed to Pusha Inc., a record label founded by Compton rapper YG and DJ Mustard. Is an American rapper who's affiliated with the SchoolYard Crips, particularly the 4800 block. And bruh, he's definitely dropped some bangers over the years. I actually first started listening to dude when he dropped a song called Crippin' featuring Vince Staples, and he's put out a lot of other good music since then, including songs like Get Crackin' and Spin 'Em Round. Y'all make sure y'all tap in ASAP. The SchoolYard Crips though, they also have several other rappers, which include Raspberry Diamond, C Breezy, Reem Riches, and D-Lo. But this gang's biggest rapper is definitely gonna be, alright, BlueFace, baby.
How many females do you think you knocked down in the last 6 months? Let's play higher or lower. 5?
Hell no.
Higher? No. We're gonna get. What?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
What you say?
1,000. No, I'm a f***er.
I'm gonna do a mini documentary on him soon, but I'll keep it brief for now. BlueFace first came into the music scene after dropping several local hits, but he really broke out after releasing Tatiana. And ever since then, whether it's TV, social media, music, or knocking off Krishan's dad, you pretty much gonna be seeing bro everywhere.
He said I'm a fucker.
Since January or 6 months?
It's like sometimes it might be a threesome, it might be foursome. I didn't have a fivesome.
Yeah,
That's the most you've had?
too.
Yeah.
It's 5?
Me and 4 girls.
You and 4.
Damn.
Yeah. It was pretty hard.
Yeah. No pun intended. Though.
Well, that was before he got locked up. Free that man. But y'all let me know if I'm leaving out any other artists in the comments. Let's get their music heard. Current state of the SchoolYard Crips. Like many parts of Los Angeles, the mid-city section of Los Angeles has also been through a lot of gentrification over the years. So the area is naturally seen a lot of the past locals relocating in different parts of Los Angeles. This also goes for the gangs too. There's still a lot of them come and go. When it comes to the current state of the SchoolYard Crips, they're one of the more active gangs in the area. And there's still stories about them being told to this day. Even with gang injunctions placed on this gang, they still manage to thrive to the point where they have a presence in other states as well, like Florida and Georgia. But y'all let me know if I'm leaving out y'all state. Anyways, that's it for the SchoolYard Crips. Got any crazy stories about these guys? Any close calls? Did I miss anything? Did I get anything wrong? Y'all let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, or if you're part of the Danger Gang. Y'all stay safe or dangerous out there.